Hey y'all, it's Connor from Bigfoot Anonymous. I'm here to read my Letters from Family and Friends chapter out of Erie Swamps, Road Trip to Eden. The first one comes from my cousin Mary Ace. So, your granddad's sister, Mal Flynn, told us that one day when she was very young, around 10 years old-ish, she was told to do a message, e.g. go to a shop, send a message to a neighbor, etc. And on her way there, she saw a fragile old lady with very long, gray, white hair, brushing her hair, sitting on a stall outside a specific neighbor's house, the neighbor being named Mrs. Lynch. She had never seen this woman before, and in those days, everybody seemed to know everyone around the neighborhood and village. The next morning, the news came that Mrs. Lynch had passed away, and that the story is the gray-haired lady was a banshee that was symbolizing that Mrs. Lynch was soon to pass away. Old Irish folklore. The same woman was apparently never seen again, and our great Nan never believed her due to nobody knowing of this woman in the village. But my Nan, Mal Flynn, swore that the story was true. Each time we went back to Limerick, she would always show us the same house where she was said to see the woman sitting on the stool. Alex. Well, I guess my statement would be, I take a left on the Sunrise Oval off of Sleepy Hollow Road. As we pull in, we stop because we think there's a deer crossing the road. When we looked, though, it wasn't a deer. It was something on two legs that ran across the road faster than any average person could run. It ran up the hill in almost a gallop. Second story, I believe you were there, but we heard rustling outside my walkout basement. We looked out the window and there were eyes like 5'5", 6 foot, looking into the window, taller than any known Ohio animal could stand. Jake. Pulling into Sleepy Hollow neighborhood, woods to the left, big field, hill to the right, with a red barn at the top of the hill. As we're pulling in slowly, we see a figure crossing the street on two legs, resembling a werewolf, Bigfoot, bigger than a human, and as soon as it crosses the street, it dead sprints up towards the barn, running faster than humanly possible. Still feels like a dream. Birdman. When we were younger, we used to go out in the woods by Kensky's house and just hike and BS. One night, we got spooked by something and started running home. We stopped about halfway to look back because we heard a noise from far away. All of a sudden, a huge light lit up the entire woods for about 3 seconds, and then we never heard anything or saw where it came from. Only time I could think. Bolster it however you want. Hannah. It was a cooler night in Chatham Township, and just like any other weekend night, a few friends and I were sitting around the fire enjoying each other's company and having a few drinks. We were about an acre back from my friend Alana's house in her backyard, which was a typical hangout spot. We have never had issues with phone service, and we always connected our phone to a speaker. We were able to stream music with no issues. Something about this night fell off. We were all sitting around talking about how we brought up something seemed weird. We ignored it, shook off the feeling, and continued to listen to music while a few of our friends were driving around the four-wheeler. Randomly, the music stopped playing, and my friend asked for someone else to connect to the speaker. We all connected our phones, and every single one of our phones had no service. We really didn't think much into it, but again, a strange feeling. This has never happened before, and the area typically always had fine service. An hour or so goes by, and still no service. This is when we realized our feelings of something feeling off earlier were validated. We saw two figures back further in the yard. A big wooded area. At first, we thought it was our friends that were on the four-wheeler, but did not hear the four-wheeler. We started to call out their names with no response, but it seemed these two figures were getting closer. All of us got quiet and started to panic a bit, when all of a sudden, our two friends ran from the wooded area, no four-wheeler, claiming the four-wheeler broke down. Here's when it got weird. The two figures were gone, and at this point, we had not mentioned to our other friends on the four-wheeler what had happened. They said they saw two figures and thought it was us coming to check up on them. When they realized it wasn't us and they walked towards the figures, they mysteriously also vanished. We then all started to walk towards the four-wheeler, panicked at this point, and we heard the music blasting. How though, when the phones had no service and it wasn't music we typically listen to? While in the wooded area again, we saw the figures, but then again they disappeared. The four-wheeler happened to start back up, and at this point we decided to go back up to the house. What we all witnessed is unexplainable and still gives me a weird feeling just talking about that night. Our phones also did not end up having service until hours later. At this point, it was almost morning time. Nate. As a young kid growing up, imagination was everything to me. From sliding down the stairs in a laundry basket, thinking I was escaping a base under attack, to starting world wars in my bedroom with G.I. Joes. People believe that children may see beings from other dimensions, or ghosts as some may debate. Others would like to believe it's just their imagination. For me, on the other hand, was far from imagination. While playing with action figures by the window in my grandfather's attic, my dad heard me talking to someone as if they were in the room with me. He thought it may have been me just talking as characters I was playing with. My dad then came into the attic to check up on me, and my action figures were on the total opposite side of the room, and I was standing by an open window. My dad then went to ask who I was talking to. I proceeded to tell him the man in the black tuxedo. My dad then asked where this man went. I told him that he had jumped out the window. Time had passed, and years later, this story came up at a family function. And when I learned that my great-grandfather died in the house I was in, and at the time of his death, he was wearing a black tuxedo. To this day, I believe I had an encounter with the ghost of my great-grandfather. One morning, while I was doing some dog sitting at your dad's house, I thought it would be a great idea to watch Paranormal Activity and lay with the little pup. It was pretty early, so I was really tired and dozing off. As soon as I started to slip under sleep, I saw a shadow in the corner of my eye, and Buddy went crazy. He was barking repeatedly and staring off into an empty doorway. Moral of the story, don't watch scary movies alone in the basement. Tony and Adriana. On the road to the local library, Tony was seated on the passenger seat. There was a little swamp growing cattails nearby. He had noticed a figure standing in the water, until upon closer look, it was actually floating above the water. Shocked at this sight of a person levitating, this figure's silhouette seemed to be continuously moving. The figure had the shape of a person, but it was also composed of thousands of gnats in a strange swarm above the swamp. It was facing the road, moving its arms slowly side to side as Tony drove down the road. The figure, with its head now turned towards the car, staying in its place. Adriana was fond of dolls as a young child, and she collected porcelain ones. One particular doll that she liked was her musical doll that wore a green dress with a brown hair tie and a neat bun. She came with her own stand and was always sitting down rather than her other dolls would be standing. She had a musical tuner attached to her back which would make her sway side to side whenever she played her tune. Days turned to weeks when Adriana noticed that this doll would move on its own. Not too noticeably, the doll would always be in a different position in the morning. The doll was always facing Adriana when she woke up. Adriana noticed that on nights that she'd stay up late, the doll would suddenly begin to play music, and each morning, the doll would be facing her no matter what position Adriana would put her in. The fondness she felt for the doll turned to weariness as she had a hard time avoiding the doll's stare. Then she made a decision to lock the doll away so that she could sleep peacefully again. Allie. We were riding on a four-wheeler on the main road in the middle of the day, down from your grandparents' farm. Came upon a bend, and a big black cat leapt from the middle of the road and onto the hillside above us. The hill is probably 10 to 12 feet high, and it made the jump in one leap. Supposedly, it's impossible for black panthers to live in Ohio, but I don't know what else it could have been. It was a huge cat with a black long tail. Kaylee. It was Wednesday night in Mohican. I woke up as soon as I did. I thought I was the last one up. Considering I saw people walking around, I was still half asleep, so I didn't realize the time I could see right through them. As soon as I walked through someone, I realized I was seeing ghosts. Once they realized I could see them, they were all staring at me and intrigued. I could tell they were surprised that I could see them. They were all around my age. There were about 35 to 40 of them. So many faces watching me walk around the room. I was looking for someone to wake me up. I woke up to a girl telling her I see ghosts. Please help me find a counselor. The first girl ignored me. The second one asked help. She led me to a counselor and I told her everything I was seeing. The ghosts were all watching me tell my story. There were two to the right front of me, dead, hanging from a bunk bed from their necks. But most of them were alive and watching my every move. One of the girls on the bunk bed where dead people were hanging was just reading a book. She put her book down just to listen to me talk to her. She was so pretty and looked very friendly. I could tell a few of them wanted to try and talk to me, but I was too scared at the time. But now I wish I did try to help them. They all seemed very nice, but mostly just in shock as I was. We were all confused and wondered why I could see them. The counselor had me call my parents and tell them I was seeing ghosts, so I did at 5 a.m. They wanted to come and pick me up, but I didn't want them to. I didn't want to get made fun of for the parents that had to come up pick me up because of seeing ghosts. So I told them I'm staying. Unfortunately, still get made fun of for the rest of the trip because the word got out that I saw ghosts and no one believed me except for the one girl that helped me. I ended up sleeping in the teacher's dorm that night. I never cried the entire trip, but once I came home at the end of the trip, I let it all out to my parents and tears and was still in shock to this day. Adam. 5th grade Mohican school trip. I forgot how long the trip was, but it felt longer than a few days. Just looking at the agenda made me sick to my stomach, and now thinking, how am I going to spend a few nights with all these jerks? The cabin had an old house feel to it and it felt poorly insulated. The trip kept taking a turn for the worse as the hours went by and people started to get sick. And now it's time for us to get ready for bed after a rough day. Someone didn't want us there. Being in the dorms was actually the best part of the whole night for me. We were able to get comfortable and hear intriguing ghost stories from this cool, younger, hippie instructor while being annoying with our friends. The stories were mostly about Native Americans that once lived on the land that were still haunting the area. He also talked about how there was an insane asylum in the 1800s where Indians once lived, most likely enslaved or forcibly put in the asylum. While we relaxed and goofed off, we kept getting sunk into these ghost stories he was telling us about. They were very intriguing, and it was like he was doing his own spirit cooking through the stories he was telling. I had my own story to tell after that night, a spiritual one that I will never forget. Once we were all asleep, I spontaneously wake up in the middle of the night while still in a dreamlike state of mind, like I was sleepwalking in a more conscious way. It felt like I was floating around the whole dorm room while moving at a faster speed than a walk, and physically feeling nothing while my classmates kept slipping away. Now I remember uncontrollably heading towards the door that leads me outside. I hear someone leading me there. I hear someone say, "Hey, what are you doing?" It was the hippie stopping me at the exit, wondering why I'm trying to head outside. I don't even know if I ever responded to this poor guy, but I do recall just heading back gradually to my bunk while in the same state of mind. My visual ends with me heading back to my bunk, seeing 3 of my close friends acting just as bizarre, talking in their sleep to hippies while he's trying to figure out what the frick is going on with these kids. I vividly remember hearing and seeing all of them incomprehensible while trying to talk to him in their sleep. Then I finally fall back to sleep. So I was being taken outside by some spirits, or was some spirit taking me outside? For what reason? Did some other being want me to leave the dorm? Sounds like I took some psychedelics in 5th grade, right? Wrong, but it was somewhat the same feeling as a deep psychedelic trip, as I learned through my later experiences. The time to wake up finally arrived, and I'm approached by this hippie telling me I was sleepwalking last night. I played it off like I didn't know I sleptwalked, but I did know. My spirit had woken up fully to express itself that night, or another spirit took full control of my body to lead me to their perspective in an unexplainable way. This trip was drugless mystery during my younger years, when I think I might have been woken by the Mohicans. I used to sleepwalk here and there before the trip to Mohican. I never sleptwalk again, but life is a dream. So then years later, you and I had a strange occurrence at a golf course. We had a secret spot that was shown to me through mutual friends where you have to walk through the woods in someone's backyard to get through. A peaceful night with the herb being passed starts to get dark, and we make a decision to head back to the car. Our sense of direction goes a little off when we get into the woods, and the sun completely disappears, and we have nothing but a flashlight on one of our phones. And we get spooked because we spot a light that looks like a flashlight. So I know I was thinking cop, but I still don't know what it was. Sleep well and dream forever. You can get Erie Swamps, Road Trip to Eden on Amazon. I'll have the link in the bio. Peace, y'all.